HTTP response, and HTTP response will contain a field called setCookie, and it'll have a cookie name, for example, shopping cart. I'll call it shop cart, and its value could be equal to, for example, 1, 2, 3. So I'm assuming that Amazon uses a shopping cart ID, to represent shopping carts of different customers. So it does something like this. At the same time, the server is going to allocate another entry in its database. So the cookie name is shop cart, and its value is 1, 2, 3. And by default, your shopping cart doesn't have anything in it. Okay? In this case, I'm assuming that the shopping cart data represents what items I have in my cart. So now, when the browser receives this HTTP response, it sees the set cookie field and it says, oh, okay, so it looks like Amazon.com wants me to create a cookie that is called shop cart and to set its value to 1, 2, 3. So in its database, the browser will record from which domain this cookie comes from. So Amazon.com, and then the cookie name is shop cart equals 1, the shop cart, and the value goes right here, 1, 2, 3. Now, from this point on, whenever the browser visits the domain Amazon.com, so really whenever the browser visits any website, it'll consult this table. And if it sees that it's visiting Amazon.com, it'll say, okay, I see that Amazon.com has previously set a cookie called shop cart with a value of 1, 2, 3. So the next time so that's the first step, second step. In the next time, when the browser sends an HTTP request to the server, what's going to happen is, in its HTTP request, amongst other things, it will include a field called cookie shop cart equals 1, 2, 3. And when the server receives this HTTP request, he will consult his database and say, oh, it contains a cookie name called shop cart with ID 1, 2, 3, and over here I have a record of what this customer has added to his shopping cart. So when I generate a page as a response to this request, I'm going to generate a page where the shopping cart contains all of the items that the user has previously added. So for example, let's say this request contains a request somewhere in its entity body saying add 2 Purina bags. Yeah, 2 carts. Trying to keep it as realistic as possible. So now, when the server gets it, he sees, okay, cookie, shopping cart, 1, 2, 3, right? So I should add 2 bags of Purina to the shopping cart of this user. So, okay, so now, and when the server sends back an HTTP response, it will generate a page. It'll generate a page, whatever Amazon pages typically look like, commercial, account stuff, in the cart, it'll say that, there are 2 Purinas, right? And whenever I visit any page from Amazon.com, it will ensure that the pages that are generated are the ones where the cart has memory. Now, what are the security considerations of this? Well, turns out, there are a lot. So cookies are often used for logins. So let's say that I log into gmail.com, and Gmail sets a cookie that keeps me logged in. If somebody goes into my web browser and steals my cookie for Gmail, they may be able to log in. I mean, it's probably not going to work for Gmail because Gmail relies on more than just cookies. But a lot of websites, well, all they rely on is cookies. And there are different kinds of cookies. Some cookies, they have expiration dates. So this means that after a while, the browser will delete the cookie from the database. Some cookies are perpetual, meaning that they never expire. They'll stay there until you manually delete it. But perhaps the most important and the most fundamental part of the cookie security is what's called the same origin policy. I should send the cookies only to the domains that actually set them. For example, I shouldn't be sending the cookie that has been set by Amazon.com to eBay.com or to any other website. Because if people can steal your cookies, they can do harm. They could log into your accounts. Now, and in my experience, and this is kind of like a sacrilege of web development, never store passwords inside cookies. Okay? If somebody is, if your website has a login, never store passwords inside cookies. Okay? Because if somebody happens to intercept your cookie, they're able to log in. There are also different kinds of cookies. There are secure cookies and there are, regular cookies. So the regular cookies, they can be sent over HTTP, but secure cookies can be sent only over HTTPS. So this means that if I'm connected to a website and there is a secure cookie, then the browser will refuse to send it over HTTP. Okay? So basically, same origin policy. Make sure people don't steal your cookies. Okay? Makes sense? All right. And yes, there are tools out there which you can use to just, plug in the USB. I don't know if it still works. I've seen it like that. But you plug it into the USB and it dumps, the cookie databases of Firefox, Chrome, and IE. So, yeah, it's not that hard. In fact, all you got to do is just, copy all the files. All right. So we talked about that. Now, as far as the server-side sessions go, we talked about that. So, as far as the server-side session goes, when I maintain my session using get and post variables, when I generate a session ID in the beginning and I pass it through get and post, I need to make sure those IDs are not stolen, okay? Because people will try to steal your session IDs. Also, you need to make sure that those IDs are random, that they're not easily guessable. Because if people can guess your session ID, then you can easily get into somebody's session. Oh my God, I've seen so many vulnerabilities of people doing that. And now they even have tools which help you automate the guessing test. So, sitting ducks are not that hard to come by, unfortunately. So, use a good random ID generator, all right? And then, okay. So what are the techniques for hijacking server-side session? Well, there are many. First is the TCP hijacker. So in all the web, before anything can happen, I need to open a TCP connection. On port 80 for HTTP, on port 443 for HTTPS. But I have to open an HTTP connection. Well, what if I fool you into connecting to a different server, which has a web page which looks exactly like that? A lot of phishing attempts, attempt to do just that. Or maybe, when TCP sends out a connection request to a server, somebody can, intercept it and redirect it to another server. So you actually end up being connected to a different web server. So that's one way to hijack a session. Another one is if we're using get and post in order to pass session IDs, then if I'm able to compromise your session ID somehow, either by guessing it or by using a packet sniffer in order to capture your network traffic and find out what that session ID is. And there are many tools like that. One is Fiddler for Windows. There is Burp Suite for Kali. And you can even write one yourself. It's not super hard. Okay? There are also replay attacks. So, a replay attack refers to the kind of attack where I capture the message that was sent before and I replay it to the server. Consider this, let's say that the server has a secure login. So I enter my username and password and I hit sign in. The username and password will be encrypted and sent to the server. Now, if the attacker intercepts that message, he won't be able to find out what my username and password are because, well, they're encrypted. He cannot break encryption. But if the attacker knows that this particular message contains the username and password that the server expects in order to sign you in, even if I cannot read them, what I can do is, for example, I can replay that message to the server and he will let me in. So this is called a replay attack. So, and there are many kinds of replay attacks out there. For example, let's say that I know your old credentials. I can simply use them to log in if they still work. Okay? So, how do you deal with this? Well, cryptography is a big part of this, and once again, CS452. But the general idea is to use good random tokens associated with different communications. So for example, let's say that, and this is a very primitive example, people normally would not use something like this in the real world, but that's the philosophy. Let's say that the server keeps track of different authentication attempts. So when I click, authenticate, log in, the server it will use a protocol which requires that all messages are labeled sequentially. So first login attempt, second, millionth, etc. So in every single encrypted message containing username and password, it'll contain that sequence number. So if the attacker happens to intercept the old message and he replays it, the server will check the sequence number and it's not going to be the right one. So in real world, we use things called nonces. Nonces are random number. They are random numbers. So basically, the client would generate a random number and he would include it into the encrypted message containing username and password. The server will get that message and then send the nonce back to the client, asking the client, did you actually send a message with this nonce? And the client is going to check it, and if he sees that the nonce in the message echoed by the server is not the nonce in the message that you sent, he says, nope, something's fishy. Okay, probably a replay. Makes sense, right? Are we good? Are we good? All right. So that's the sessions. And then what are the techniques for hijacking? Just talk with that. And now let's talk about other attacks on clients. So we started by talking about attacks on clients. We just talked about hijacking gets and posts and replay attacks. Let's talk about other attacks on clients. Of course, the most popular one is phishing, right? It was a big deal, 20 years ago, and now it's an even bigger deal. People are getting better and better at phishing. And once again, phishing definitely is something that typically targets clients. Because if the best way to steal your credentials is to fool you into giving them to me, myself. So I can send you a phishing email telling you to, somehow convincing you or enticing you or scaring you into visiting my webpage and entering your credentials, then I got your credentials. We get those every day, and our IT is sometimes trying to educate people by sending them, ethical spam emails. They're getting pretty good. They're getting pretty good. There was one email about somebody logging into my faculty account from Montana, and I was not in Montana at the time. It looked very legit from what Office 365 typically sends. So, I actually had to come home and open it up in a sandboxed, environment, filtered by Burp Suite, looking at every message. And then I saw that it had a bunch of links going to Belarus, and that's where it kind of fell apart for me. So, yeah. So, phishing can target basically anybody, and it can fool people into disclosing their credentials, right? And there are many ways of doing that. I can spoof a web page that looks legitimate, but really contains my credentials. Okay? And then here is, another example of a phishing attack. Now, this website looks like a website of a legitimate bank. In fact, maybe people who have made this website, maybe they have actually taken a website of a legitimate bank and cloned it. It's very easy to do. Kali Linux has plenty of tools to clone any website you want. In fact, it has a suite called Social Engineering Toolkit, which basically which takes you through all of the stages of phishing. It allows you to clone a legitimate website, and then it allows you to run your own server to actually harvest the credentials that people put in. I wish it worked as smoothly as it did a few years ago, but yeah, it has all the tools that you need. Now, if you look at this web page, it looks like a web page of a legitimate website, and well, I know it might be so, but look. Also, to log in addition to entering username and password, you also got to enter your credit card number and expiration date. Yeah. Right? This is a very well done, phishing website. When you look at something like this, right? You're not going to roll your eyes right away, right? Because if you see a poorly put together phishing website, you look at it, really? But this one, it looks pretty legit. In fact, when I first saw this, I had to myself, so what's wrong with it? And then, after about 5 seconds, when it says that's oh, that's what's wrong. Now, you can even do something like this. You can make this phishing attack much more robust by when the user actually enters his credentials and credit card number, right? I can actually send those to the legitimate banking website and have the user log in. Okay? So the user thinks everything was normal. I logged into the web page, I came to this web page and I logged in. So, and guess what? The credentials, they went to the bank website, to the bank side of the legitimate bank, and they logged you in. Guess where the credit card number went? Not to your bank, because your bank doesn't need it. It went to the attacker. So adding extra fields on web pages is a very potent technique. Okay? So that's basically the idea. Now, of course, we talked about APTs, and the APT phishing attacks can be even more sophisticated. Okay? I can make a website that looks indistinguishable. So, what is a countermeasure for phishing? Well, one of the sources suggests updating the blacklist of websites. Also, another important thing is make sure your people are not idiots. Make sure that people are educated about phishing. That not everything that you see is what you get. So what our IT is trying to do, I think, is see how many people take the bait, and people who take enough bait, they'll send it back to training, saying, okay, you clearly fall for everything. So you need more education. See, in North Korea, I heard they send you to re-education. But here, all they can do is make you take the training again. So yeah, education is very important. During the security day, there was one person, and she kept emphasizing the value of education. That's and that really is the most important thing when it comes to phishing. Now, yes, there are also tools which can help you detect phishing websites or websites that have been compromised. I recently had 2 papers accepted to IEEE CCW conference. I have a feeling that a website has been compromised by a web exploit kit. So if I had connectivity, I could have shown it to you. But if you Google IEEE CCWC, I think Sherman is doing that. Yeah, you read the Sherman? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, because I can show you other people if you do. So basically, that website, it looks like it's been compromised by web exploit kit. Because when you go there, the website looks normal, but there is this, pop-up and it's a very poorly made pop-up because, text fields go out of bounds and everything, and the red cross, to close it, it's, I don't know, it looks like it's very low res, and it basically says, enter your username and email in order to get, live updates about IEEE, conference events. Now, now, of course, this could be just, the website admins doing that. But then again, Google, if you Google for IEEE CCWC, Google gives you a warning. This site may be compromised. Because Google has, apparently, tools to analyze the pages that it indexes to see if there are tracks of things like web exploit kits. Oh, you looked it up? Yeah. Ah, there you go. Yeah, perfect. Can I? Yeah. So Justine here looked it up. So this is the website, and this pop-up, comes up. That looks like a typical web exploit kit. If you remember, when we talk about PPIs, right, you can purchase web exploit kits which allow you to basically add things like this into compromised websites. Now, if you, did you Google that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so,
I had it saved to his document.
Oh, I see, yeah. Oh. Yeah, if you Google it, you'll see that Google probably says that it's still compromised. Yeah. Now, what surprises me is how did the people who organized the conference did not figure this out yet? Do they not visit their own web page? Yeah. So, yeah. So, let's take a look at more attacks. Another kind of attack is URL obfuscation. This one, is such a cheap shot, it almost makes me feel guilty. So, but let's say that I give you a link called fullerton.edu. It's a link. You click on it. It takes you to what you assume is fullerton.edu. So if your link says fullerton.edu, you trust it, right? You say, oh, if I click here, it'll take me to fullerton.edu. But must the link appear exactly as where it is taking you to? There's no rule for that, right? When I write pages, I can make any link just using a href, provide website you want to link to, and then, the text of the link, and then I close it. So what I could do is, I could make a link whose text says fullerton.edu, but then have it linked to www.fisher15.com. I just made the website up, but typically they'd be, a bit more subtle than that. So people, trust it. So they would click on it, and that's exactly where it would take you. The other one, I think, is very creative. So, let's say that, I send you a URL, check out www.paypal.com. It says paypal.com. That's the domain to which you're going to. It's not a link, just paste it into your browser. So you figure that, must be paypal.com, right? Well, and this actually happened. So one guy, he has purchased a domain, paypal.com. You may say, wait, how is it possible? Isn't paypal.com owned by, PayPal? Well, it is. But he didn't actually purchase paypal.com. See? And here you have the benefit of having somebody who's a native Russian speaker. In the Russian alphabet, there is a letter R. We call it R, but it makes like this R sound. Like ryba. Okay? It means fish in Russian. Okay? It makes this R sound. But it looks exactly like an English letter P. So he took the R and he used the Cyrillic letter in front of apal.com. Pretty clever, right? That's an example of URL obfuscation. Now, could you catch this? I mean, yeah, if you took this domain name and you opened up in a hex editor and you say, wait a minute, that's not a hex code for English letter P. But, of course, all of you, I'm sure do that, right? Before putting any URL into your browser, you make sure that it's actually encodes to what it says, right? So, now, there are ways of there are ways around it using an approach called Unicode. Okay, Unicode is what the browsers use to encode URLs, and Unicode is one of the encoding techniques. And if you use it right, you can actually defeat such kinds of attacks. So URL obfuscation. So once again, URL obfuscation is basically deceiving people using URLs. I give you a link or I give you a URL, but things are not as they seem. Okay? So, another one is clickjacking. Actually, I asked this question before, and I got a pretty great response once. Somebody said that, somebody said, unfortunately, I forgot the answer. It sounds like a fetish that I never heard of. I didn't know how to rate that one. Well, at least I knew how many points to give, but usually, whenever somebody gets the question wrong, I'd like to give them some kind of feedback, right? Some kind of comment, like what was wrong. And so after thinking for a while, and I wrote that actually, clickjacking refers to, gave the correct answer, and I said, I suppose there is a fetish like that, but I have never heard of that either. So it's the internet. I'm sure you can find anything. Okay, seek and you shall find. Right? So, yeah. When you teach, you come up against all kinds of interesting individuals. Okay, on and offline. Okay, so what exactly is clickjacking for real? Well, remember the good old JavaScript and how it makes your pages all nice and dynamic? Well, so one of the things that I'd like you to recall is that with JavaScript, I can associate JavaScript codes with events, right? Such as moving mouse over something or clicking something. So, clickjacking can be easily implemented in JavaScript. So basically, clickjacking is when I hijack your clicks. So, let's say that I make a link. So, the link text says trust me, which means you should trust it, of course, always. And you may say, wait a minute. I learned about URL obfuscation, right? Just because text says something doesn't mean it'll actually take me there. So let me, move my mouse over and see where does it actually link. And you see that it links to trustedsite.com. Oh, okay. A link says trust me, and it links to trustedsite.com. Now let's say that you know that the site is actually trusted. It's actually where you want to go. So you think you're good, right? Well, as far as clicking on it, yes, you are good. But this page is a little surprise. It attaches this little JavaScript code to the onMouseUp event. So onMouseUp event is basically the event that is triggered when I release the mouse. So this is mouse down, and when I release mouse, that's mouse up. So onMouseUp event, I associate this JavaScript. And this JavaScript basically says open another window called www.evilsite.com. So essentially, I click on a link that is supposed to take me to a trusted website. Everything is fine until I release my mouse. And when I release my mouse, it'll take me to evilsite.com. So this attack is very powerful, because even if you are careful, even if you move the mouse over the link first, because your browser at the bottom it actually shows you where this link is going to take you, or sometimes it gives a little tooltip saying if it takes you there, it'll show that it's actually taking you to the right site. And it will take you to the right site. The thing is, it'll also open another window which takes you to an evil site. Okay? So this is another example of clickjacking. And they're actually, I believe they're actually now laws against this. Like, you shouldn't be, hijacking people's clicks, because that's a deceptive practice. Some people use it, for commercials. Like if I want to make some money on my website, because some websites feed themselves through ads, I will make it open an ad pop-up. And yes, some websites do it quite a lot, especially the news websites. Okay, so now let's talk about more attacks on clients, and the one is called cross-site scripting. And this one is still a big problem. In fact, it is such a big problem that whenever I've been to any kind of competition that deals with anything penetration testing, there is almost always a page that has a cross-site scripting vulnerability. Was it the case at CPTC?
Oh, do you remember? I don't think so. Or at least we didn't find it.
Oh. Oh. Wow. That's the first one. Those are the competitions where I should not know what people were doing. Yeah, so, because they separated us, right? So, well, let's talk about cross-site scripting. Now, we'll talk about cross-site scripting, SQL injections, and everything else. But all of those attacks have one thing in common. They are a result of developers not sanitizing the user inputs. Whatever the user inputs into the website, they take it, hook, line, and sinker, without actually sanitizing the inputs. They're basically being, the dumb dogs that will basically eat anything that people feed them. Okay? You put it into their mouth, they'll eat it without sniffing it first. Well, and how do you defeat all those attacks? Well, sanitize your inputs. Okay? So, this is once again, this is where the developers are at fault. So let's talk about the cross-site scripting attacks. So those are the attacks which make your browser execute the JavaScript that you don't want to execute, because it's typically malicious. And there are two kinds of varieties of cross-site scripting attacks, or XSS. One is called persistent, and one is called non-persistent. So let's talk about those. So, first, let's talk about persistent. So, in a persistent XSS attack, the code that has been injected into the web page will basically remain there forever, and it will be seen by anybody who is visiting that web page. So, for example, I can attack a website, and I'll explain the technique in a few moments, but I can inject a piece of code like this, which will show a message called XSS injection every time whenever you visit a website. It'll show that pop-up. And everybody who visits that website will see this pop-up. Now, let's see how this will actually work in practice. So, let's say that I have a website which has a guestbook feature. I miss the 90s. Okay? But I have a guestbook feature which allows people to enter, the comments on how much they love my website. And being the dumb dog that I am, I will take whatever comments that people type, and I will just display them on the web page. So whatever they type, I generate an HTML web page displaying their comments. How can this bite me back? Well, the answer is like this. So let's say that whenever somebody types some kind of input into my website, into the text field, I'm going to take whatever they type and I'm going to generate an HTML page containing exactly what they typed. Well, most people, will type normal things. Like, for example, hi, and, hello. This is just text. So when I generate an HTML page, it'll just contain that text. Now, let's say that some user decides to type something like this. Script, alert, XSS injection, close script. Now, I'm going to generate an HTML page that contains this, which is exactly what he typed. Now, what happens when the browser is rendering this web page? What happens when the browser sees the script? You know this thing. It tells the browser to treat everything between the script tags as JavaScript, right? It shouldn't be rendered as HTML, but rather it should be executed, right? It should be executed like JavaScript. And guess what happens? It executes that statement, and a pop-up is displayed. So from now on, anybody who visits my web page will receive this pop-up. And it'll remain there until, well, I realize that my website has been hacked and I remove it. And it'll appear there for everybody who visits my website. Now, once again, if I was a little smarter and I actually sanitized the input, if I check to make sure that I strip all of the script tags, then this wouldn't be a problem. In fact, a lot of server-side scripts that are responsible for implementing things like, guest books, comment sections, etc., they already include functions to sanitize the inputs. And they will do things like JavaScript tag stripping. Okay, so they will strip out the tags to make sure that, you don't end up like this. Okay? Sanitize your inputs. Now, let's take a look at a non-persistent attack. Now, in a non-persistent attack, rather than compromising a web page and then having the compromised web page affect all of the users who visit that web page, I'm going to compromise a single session. So for example, have you ever used a website, for example, a search website, where you type in your query, and if you have a typo in your query, it will display your query, highlight, the typo, and ask you, did you really mean, something like this, right? So, well, what did the web page do? It took your input, right? And it generated another page that contained that input, right? Now, what happens if I don't sanitize that input? Well, I'm going to make attackers very happy, because guess what the attackers can do? They can do a similar thing. Let's say that my website operates using the GET method. So in other words, you could do search using, something like this. I had it before, I erased it, I'll write it again. So, for example, this is my website. Search.php. So this is a script that'll be processing the search queries. Question mark, and then query equals, and then this is whatever the user has typed to search for. For example, cat pictures. Okay? So now, let's say that I made a typo in my search query, and the server will send me back a page containing, something like, you typed this, did you really mean to search for that? Like Google does. This means that my input is going to be integrated into the web page. And what if I can sanitize it? What can the attacker do? Well, the attacker can do something like this. So, here is my website, victimsite.com equals, and I have a script called search.php, which processes the search queries, and this is the query, okay? Query is equal to the search string. This is the normal use. But what if the attacker sets my query equal to script document location equals http equals site.com, steal cookie PHP, etc. Now, so in JavaScript, we know that location, changing the value of that variable will redirect your browser. So what am I doing here? Well, if I don't sanitize my inputs, and I embed the search queries into the generated search results, guess what it's going to embed into my web page? It will embed this JavaScript, right? Right? And when the browser executes this JavaScript, my page is going to be redirected to an evil site, which presumably, based on this string, steals my cookies. Does that make sense? Now, why is it called non-persistent? It's called non-persistent because it is active only for this session. Okay? This will not affect every single user that visits the website. It will only affect the people to whom I send this particular query. So, in case of persistent, I inject it into the web page and it stays there for every single user that visits the website. In this case, it will only affect the users to whom I send this particular query. Okay? So it's non-persistent. Make sense? Yeah. And in the past, when I asked questions about this, for some reason people thought it was related to advanced persistent threats. Not necessarily. I mean, yeah, advanced persistent threats could make use of those attacks, but the persistent and non-persistent here has no relation to advanced persistent threats. Okay? And what are the countermeasures? Sanitize the freaking inputs. Okay? If you do that, you will be in a pretty good shape. I mean, in fact, like nowadays, you don't really even have to do that much. There are libraries and libraries and libraries. Some frameworks, they have already built-in functionalities, so you can sanitize your inputs. Perl, the language, also has an interesting, thing. It uses what's called taint analysis. So basically, whenever you get something from the user, it's marked as tainted. Tainted means dirty. It hasn't been validated. It hasn't been sanitized. And if you end up, processing the dirty inputs, basically it can give you a warning saying, hey, you are processing unsanitized inputs. So how do you clean it? How do you sanitize it? You have to run it through some sort of a regular expression check. And then Perl will mark it as clean. Now, of course, it cannot verify that your validation was actually correct, but at least it makes sure that it was validated at least somehow. Okay? Make sense? Of course, the real question is what people are going to do about it, because developers who have no clue that they should be sanitizing inputs, they will probably look something up on Stack Overflow how to get this warning to go away. And we're back where we started. Right? But if you do know what you're doing and you understand the importance of sanitizing inputs, then this is a very useful tool. So sanitize your inputs. It's up to you, the developers. Okay? That's why I keep hammering in the fact that we must teach security and non-security courses, because if you're taking a web development course and they don't teach you about this, you start developing websites without sanitizing inputs, and yeah, things happen. Okay? So sanitize your inputs. All right. So let's see. How else can I defend myself against that as a user? Well, this one is it can help. It can help, but I'm not a huge fan of this solution, but it can help. There are plugins and extensions for browsers which block the scripts on the web pages. A lot of people use those to block ads, but if the website has been compromised with one of those attacks, then blocking scripts can help. Okay? Ad blockers are a very controversial topic in general. There are two sides to this issue, and you can decide which side you're on. Users say that it's my bandwidth and I decide how I use it. So like for example, if I'm on data plan, like what right does a website have to use the bandwidth for which I pay in order to make me see the content that I don't want to see, and possibly impeding with